Hey everybody, I'm in the middle of doing a water change on my 125 here, so I figured I'd grab my camera while we're waiting for the tank to fill back up and we can have a look at what's going on in here. I did not do any work on the filter, although I probably should have. I did change the filter last time I was in here, but as fast as that filter gets fouled up, it probably ought to get done every time I do a water change, but I'm not going to do one tonight. I did get in there and wipe all the glass down. I know there's a lot of glare going on here. Let me turn this off. This will help a little bit. But I did want to show you the bucket on the floor. I guess we can get to that. I can turn the light back on once we're done looking at the tank. So I wiped the glass down. That gets that green spot algae on it, which is really difficult to get off. Plus then it gets that sort of filamentous algae growing across it, which is pretty easy to get off. That wipes off with just a couple of wipes, not a lot of elbow grease involved in that. But there's a lot of surface area on all of this 6 feet of glass, so it's still a little bit of time consuming, and it still does wear your arm out by the time you get from one end of the tank to the other. But we got that taken care of tonight. I did all the way down to the corners. I did all the way down to the substrate. Excuse me. You have to be very careful when you're getting down close to the substrate. If the material you're using to wipe the glass down picks up any little pieces of substrate, which is very easy to do. It can pick up pieces so small you can't even see that they're in there. And then if you subsequently drag them around on the glass or rub them on the glass and scratch it, that will scratch your glass. So you got to be careful once you get that, whatever you're using to scrape, whether you're using a metal scraping tool, that will do it. If it's got a flat blade on it, you go down, it will actually, some of that substrate will swirl around and you'll scoop some up and drag it back up the glass. So you got to be really careful when you get down to that close edge of the substrate. So I did that, but I did it with my fingertips and using my polyfill batting that I use. Trying to think of anything else is going on in here other than what I've done with the plants, and there's not really, so we'll just get on with what's going on with the plants, which means I'm going to turn the light back on in a second. The one thing I did was I pulled a whole bunch of water Sprite out of here. So I've got water Sprite available as usual. I've always got water Sprite available. I've got a whole tank full of this stuff in the other room, so I'll put my email down below if you're interested. I've got lots and lots of water Sprite. I do a $22 flat rate that gets you a couple of quart-size Ziploc baggies. You may get some larger pieces, but you'll get a ton of small ones, and they grow really fast. I usually try to throw in some Java Fern or something else along with it whenever I do ship any of the water Sprite, because I got so much of it. So I also was able to get in and pull some of this fern that we can't see, some of this fern out. Now, I don't know what kind of fern that is, but I finally had enough babies growing off of it that I was able to pluck them all out of there, and I got a bunch of babies from that. They are, of course, covered in that green algae, that hair-like algae, but that's just algae. I'm not too concerned about that, and, I don't think you're going to buy plants from anybody that are algae-free. So I'm not worried about the other growth on it. It's just algae. And then, of course, lastly, what I did was I got in here with this Java Fern Windelov. It's got those little sort of fingery, spidery looking tips on them, which is really interesting. And I pulled a bunch of that out. I had a lot of little babies, and I had a bunch of pieces of roots that were getting too overgrown and just making too much of a thick, dense mass at the top of the tank. So I wound up pulling a lot of that out. And what we wound up doing was putting it all in the bucket here, and I'm treating it with the ChemiClean. So if you are interested in buying any of the Java Fern Windelov, I mean, I'm not kidding, I've got a lot of Java Fern Windelov, and I am treating it with the ChemiClean. So if it's got any cyanobacteria or any of that scummy, nasty growth on it, that's going to be killed off within the next day or two. And then, of course, as I said, that green sort of filamentous algae is the only thing we're really going to have to worry about still being on it if you do get any. Again, my email will be down in the description below. You can check that out, contact me, we can talk. I also sprayed a lot of hydrogen peroxide again tonight. Don't usually do that, but I'm trying to beat back this hair algae. And I sprayed it across the surface of this Anubias as it got exposed above the water line. This one here, I actually lifted up above the water line and gave it a good spray because it's really covered in that. And I'm really surprised we're not seeing air bubbles all over it, little oxygen bubbles all over it. So I sprayed down a little bit of the fern here, just again those top uppermost fronds that were sticking out above the water. And then I really gave the Windelov here, this Java Fern, I really, I went through this, and again, this is just dense, thick. This end's just kind of hanging over the end of the piece of wood it's mounted to. And when I say mounted to, I mean it's rooted to it. This has been there for years and years. It was a little tiny piece I got, and I wedged it into a crack in the back of the piece of woodwork I have in here, and more or less forgot about it because I used to have water Sprite that was just sort of sitting against that piece of wood and floating there. And it always blocked the light, and I never really realized it, but slowly, over the years, that Windelov just grew and grew and grew, and eventually that's what took over. And that's what it was supposed to look like. That piece of wood that you can almost see right there through all this glare is cut off at the end, like it's sawed off, and it just looks so unnatural to me that I wanted some greenery growing at the end of it, and that's what I wound up doing. I wound up tucking a piece of that little Java Fern into one of the cracks in the wood. And all these years later, it's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, and that's what that looks like. So that's all that's going on with that, but I'm going to turn this light back on again because I do want to look at this tank since we're standing right here, and I got a couple minutes before that tank fills up, so we'll have a little look at this. I'm really excited about the growth I'm getting on this, but I'm not going to talk too much about that. I will show you right here. You can see how this water Sprite is growing up out, and it's actually growing, making its way through all the other plants, and it's growing up into the garden area. And then of course this water Sprite, which is a type of fern, it's also called Indian fern, but this is a species of fern, so it's going to grow quite well emergent. And then of course I've got all of my mosses up here that are growing like little trees. If you look at the mosses growing back there, I mean, it looks like you're looking at a row of, the forest line way off in the distance, but that's moss. I just cannot get over how just luxurious and vibrant all of this growth is. And again, of course, it's thanks to this LED up here. I was actually just talking to somebody about this unit here today. And again, I'm not going to get into talking about that a lot either. What I do have going on with the tank that I do want to chat about real quick since I'm in the water change mode is I need to do another water change on this tank. It seems like I do one every couple days, and now instead of the water being tannin stained, it's just cloudy. And I've changed the filter again today, and we're already starting to get reduced water flow. We've still got plenty at the moment, but it's already starting to slow down from when I changed the filter this afternoon. It's been a couple of hours and it's already starting to clog up again. And when I pull the filter out, if you're not familiar with this tank, I've got just sort of a box with a pump at the back of it, and I just stuff the filter material down into it. It's very homemade. I just pull the wad out, I stuff a new wad in, and it's good to go. But when I'm pulling these wads of filter material out, they're almost like solid chunks of mud at this point. They stay in the shape they're in. They come out as like packed hard, almost like compressed mud. I've never really seen filters get that dirty that quickly. So I think I might have to get in and remove this piece of wood. This is just like a rotten piece of wood. I mean, I could literally break that apart and there'd be no foundational core of wood in there. The whole, I could literally just break that into crumbles in its entirety, and that does go all the way down into the bottom of the tank. And so rotten wood, breaking down into the tank is going to really add to how quickly the tank is getting dirty. I've got topsoil and potting soil that I've put back in here. Some of these plants, like if you can see this little succulent up there, looks a little out of place. But that's in a flower pot. This dead nettle right here that you can see, that's in a small flower pot that's got potting soil in it. So, I've got a lot of dirt and rocks and branches and everything else that this water is flowing through. And then, of course, when we get down in here, I've got all that woodwork and, you know, plants and everything growing in there. So this is probably about as close to a natural environment as you can get. I really wish I could do the old smell-o-vision and let everyone smell what it smells like in the basement down here, because it actually smells like being out in the woods now. You can actually smell that sort of loamy sort of soil smell, and you can smell the sort of moisture in the air. I even don't mind when I see the occasional gnats and bugs flying around. It just gives it the sense of, you know, outsidiness, which is what this is supposed to convey, of course. So anyway, this wasn't really meant to be a video talking about my waterfall tank, but what I'm going to do when I'm done my water change on my 125 here is probably just go ahead and throw the hose in here since I've got it, and we'll do a water change on this, you know, just because I'm standing right here, and again, I've got the hose. The tank's almost filled now. So I'm going to go ahead and call that good and get this uploading. Not going to worry about waiting to top the tank off or anything like that. I just wanted to have a little chat, talk about my plants being pulled out of there. Again, I do have lots of water Sprite available. I've got lots of that Java Fern Windelov available. I've got regular Java Fern. And right now I've got 2 or 3 decent-sized chunks of Anubias. So if you're one of the first few people that gets a hold of me, if you're looking for Anubias, I do have a little bit of Anubias right now. I saved it for somebody and they never got back to me, so I now have it available. So again, check my email down below. Hit me up. We'll talk. In the meantime, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. And again, we will be doing some more video on my waterfall tank here pretty soon. And you never want to miss that because that's always a good time. So thanks again for watching this one. Don't forget this one is my 125-gallon tank. And I will see you real soon on the next one.